He'd watched men beg on those screens before. Rivals, enemies, people who made the mistake of thinking they could lie to him. But this was different, because the man on his knees right now wasn't an enemy. It was his father. My name doesn't matter. What matters is the story, because once you hear it, you won't forget it. This is the story of a man who thought he understood power. A man who built walls so high he forgot what was happening at the foundation. And a woman who walked into his world quietly, knowing exactly what she'd find. Jin-Ho Park didn't raise his voice. Ever. He didn't need to. A look was enough. A silence. The weight of who he was. That did all the talking. His mansion sat above Los Angeles like a crown. Marble floors, 12 cameras, staff who moved like shadows and disappeared when he entered a room. Every morning, same routine. Coffee, black, reports on the desk before 7 a.m., security feeds live on the monitor. He liked watching the screens, not because he was suspicious, but because control felt like breathing to him, natural, necessary. The staff had learned what he expected: efficiency, silence, obedience. All except one. They called her arrogant. Zarina, the new maid. She didn't bow when he passed, didn't flinch when senior staff barked orders, just worked, quietly, efficiently. Head up, eyes forward. In a house built on hierarchy, that was practically a crime. Jin-Ho had noticed her, filed it away, said nothing. She wasn't a threat, she was staff. Or so he thought. His father, Mr. Park, rarely left his room anymore. Oxygen tank, slow steps, a man who once commanded entire networks, now fighting just to breathe. There was something almost peaceful about the old man's decline, something Jin-Ho hadn't let himself examine too closely, until that Tuesday morning. He was reviewing offshore reports when the movement caught his eye. Camera 3, East Corridor. His father, walking alone. No attendant, no call button, just the old man, moving slowly toward the kitchen wing with something almost like purpose. Jin-Ho frowned, leaned forward. And then Zarina appeared. On screen, groceries scattering across the marble floor as a bag slipped from her hands. Staff nearby froze. Not one moved to help. That was normal. What happened next was not. His father stopped, looked at her, and then began to lower himself, slowly, painfully, his old knees meeting the cold marble floor. Jin-Ho's hand went still on the keyboard. He'd watched a lot of things on those screens over the years, but he had never, not once, seen his father kneel. Not for anyone. And he had no idea that what he was about to witness next would destroy everything he believed about power, loyalty, and the cost of silence. Now here's where it gets strange. Because Jin-Ho had seen groceries drop before. Accidents happen, staff mess up, life moves on. But no one, and I mean no one in that house, moved to help her. Not one person. They just stood there, eyes down, like they'd all suddenly found something very interesting to stare at on the floor. You have to understand the culture of that house. You don't draw attention to problems. You don't create scenes. You definitely don't make Mr. Park's son look up from his monitor. So yeah, nobody moved. Zarina was on her own. She started picking things up herself. Calm. No drama. No looking around for help. Just handling it. Quietly. Like she always did. And that should have been the end of it. Except his father didn't stop walking. Jin-Ho watched the old man cross the corridor, slow, shuffling steps, oxygen-thin lungs, and just keep going. Toward her. Jinho thought, okay, maybe he's calling for an attendant. Maybe he's about to scold her for making noise. That would have made sense. That would have been normal. He leaned a little closer to the screen. And then his stomach dropped. Because his father didn't stop, didn't call anyone, didn't say a word. He just lowered himself slowly, both knees, on the cold marble floor, right next to Zarina, and started helping her pick up the groceries. I need you to picture this. A man who once had people disappeared for looking at him wrong, on his knees, on the floor, in his own house, next to the maid. The staff, frozen solid. One woman covered her mouth. A guy near the doorway actually took a step back, like he was watching something he wasn't supposed to see. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Some of them looked away, like they were ashamed. But ashamed of what, exactly? That's the question Jinho couldn't shake as he sat there, jaw tight, eyes locked on that screen. His father wasn't clumsy, wasn't confused, wasn't having an episode. He was deliberate. Every painful inch of that kneel was a choice. And then Jinho realized something that made the whole room feel smaller. His father wasn't kneeling because he fell. He was kneeling on purpose. Jinho was out of his chair before he even realized he'd stood up. That never happens. This is a man who once sat completely still while someone delivered news that would have made most people pass out. He just nodded, adjusted his cufflinks, kept going. But right now, he was moving fast down that hallway, heart doing things hearts aren't supposed to do. He pulled up the live feed on his phone as he walked, and what he saw made him slow down mid-step. His father was begging, not commanding, not instructing, begging. Let me help you, please. Just let me do this. That's what the old man was saying to Zarina, who, God bless her, looked like she wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow her whole. She kept saying no, kept trying to move away, her whole body language screaming, "Please get up, sir, I am begging you, this is so uncomfortable for everyone involved." But he wouldn't move. The staff were losing their minds quietly. You know that thing people do when they're panicking but they can't make noise? That was the whole corridor. Wide eyes, stiff shoulders, people whispering through barely moving lips like they were in a library that was also on fire. Why is he doing this? Is she manipulating him somehow? Someone should call Mr. Jinho. I am not calling Mr. Jinho. Meanwhile, Mr. Jinho was already on his way. Here's what you need to understand. This house had rules. Unspoken ones, the kind nobody writes down because everybody already knows. Staff don't make eye contact with the senior Mr. Park unless spoken to first. Staff don't speak unless asked a direct question. And nobody gets reverence in this house except the people at the top. That's just how it worked. For decades. So what Jinho was watching on that screen wasn't just unusual, it was a full breakdown of everything this house was built on. And the worst part? He didn't know what to do. Think about that. A man who always knew what to do, standing in his own hallway, completely frozen. What's the command for this? What's the protocol when your dying father is on his knees in the kitchen corridor, and every instinct you have is screaming that something is very wrong, but you don't even know what question to ask yet? There was no page in the rulebook for this. No precedent. Nothing. Jinho turned the last corner toward the kitchen wing, 30 feet away now. He could see the back of his father's silver head, could see Zarina's face, conflicted, distressed, eyes glistening just slightly. He opened his mouth to say something, and then the mansion intercom crackled. His father's voice, low, shaking, raw, carried through every speaker in the house, and what Jinho heard made his blood turn cold. The words came through the intercom like smoke. slow, heavy, impossible to ignore. But we'll get to exactly what he said in a second, because first, Jinho walked through that door, and the whole room just shifted. You know that feeling when someone enters a space and the temperature drops 2 degrees? That was Jinho. Every staff member felt it simultaneously. He didn't yell, didn't slam anything, just stood in the doorway, looked around once, and said 2 words. Everyone, out. That was it. People moved so fast, I'm surprised nobody lost a shoe. Within 30 seconds, the corridor was empty. Almost. 4 people remained. Jinho, his father, still on the floor, still not standing. Zarina, back straight, eyes forward, not running, which honestly said everything. And 1 security guard in the corner who looked like he was genuinely reconsidering his career choices. Jinho looked at his father. Long pause. The kind of silence that has weight to it. Then, get up. Not a request. His father, slowly, shook his head. No. And I need you to sit with that for a second. This man had not heard the word no from his father in maybe 20 years. Not like this. Not quiet, not defiant, not loaded with something Jinho couldn't name yet. Just no. I'm not standing up, Jinho. Jinho turned to Zarina. And here's where it gets interesting. Because most people in Zarina's position would have been trembling by now, would have been apologizing for existing. But Zarina just looked at him, calm, steady, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. And then she spoke. Her voice didn't shake. Mr. Park, your father has something he needs to say to me, and I think you need to hear it too. That's all she said. But the way she said it, it wasn't defiance, it wasn't manipulation, it was something closer to grief. Jinho looked back at his father. The old man's hands were pressed flat against the marble, head slightly bowed. And when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. If I don't do this now, he stopped, swallowed hard. I'll die with blood on my soul. The security guards stared at the wall. Zarina closed her eyes briefly, and Jinho felt something crack open in his chest that he didn't have a name for yet, because he'd heard his father talk about money, about power, about legacy. But blood on his soul? His father didn't talk like that, had never talked like that, which meant whatever was buried underneath those words had been buried for a very long time, and it was finally coming up. And then the truth came out, something Jinho was never supposed to learn. His father started talking, and the room just stopped. It began quietly, almost gently, like the old man had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head and was finally saying it out loud. 15 years ago. He paused, breathed. There was an operation overseas. We needed new territory, new supply lines, and there was a family standing in the way. Jinho didn't move. We didn't remove them ourselves. We funded the people who did, framed the father, burned the business, scattered what was left. Silence. It was clean, efficient. I didn't think about them again. And then the old man looked up at Zarina, really looked at her, until she walked through my front door. Okay, I need you to stop and feel that. Because Zarina didn't stumble into this job, didn't see a listing on Indeed and think, oh nice, Beverly Hills, great benefits. No, she came here knowing exactly whose house this was, exactly whose hands built it, exactly what it cost. That stillness everyone mistook for arrogance, that wasn't arrogance. That was a woman holding herself together every single day in the house that was built on her family's ruins. Think about the discipline that takes. Think about the pain that takes. Jinho's jaw was tight. He was doing that thing people do when their brain is receiving information, but the heart is refusing to process it yet. Because here's the part that hit different. He benefited from it. Not knowingly, not directly, but the money that paid for his education, his cars, his foundation, his entire life of clean suits and marble floors had roots, dark ones, and he never knew. The old man's voice broke slightly. This morning, my oxygen failed. I was alone in my room. I couldn't reach the call button. He looked at Zarina again. She found me. She stayed with me. She could have walked away, and nobody would have blamed her. Zarina's eyes were wet now. She wasn't sobbing, wasn't dramatic about it. Just quiet tears, the kind that have been waiting years to fall. She saved my life, the old man whispered. The life of the man who destroyed hers. Jinho stood completely still. If you'd taken a photo of him in that moment, you might have thought the image was frozen. His whole world was rearranging itself. Every memory, every assumption, everything he thought he knew about where he came from, being rewritten in real time. The old man was still on his knees. Zarina was crying silently. And Jinho had nothing. No command, no protocol, no response. Just the wreckage of a truth he couldn't unhear. But here's the thing. The confession wasn't over, because his father didn't act alone. Someone else was involved. Someone who'd been watching this family for years, and they were still out there. And then, the old man just collapsed. No dramatic warning, no final words. 1 second he was kneeling on that marble floor, the next he was down. Everything happened fast after that, and I mean fast. Jinho was shouting before his father even hit the ground. Security guard on the radio instantly, staff flooding back in from wherever they'd been pretending not to listen. Someone screamed, someone else was already on the phone. Jinho was on his knees now, beside his father, 2 fingers on his neck, years of cold composure just gone. Just a son. Scared. Private ambulance, 12 minutes. Downtown LA, private hospital, the kind with no waiting room because waiting rooms are for people who don't have Jinho's number. They loaded the old man up and moved. Now, here's the part I didn't expect. Zarina got in the vehicle. Nobody asked her to. Nobody told her to stay either. She just got in, sat down, hands folded in her lap. And Jinho looked at her for a second and said nothing. Because what do you even say? Sorry, my father funded the destruction of your entire life. Also, buckle up, it's a sharp turn on Wilshire. No, you say nothing. So that's what they both did. The whole ride. Nothing. Just the sound of sirens, and 2 people sitting inside a silence so heavy it had its own gravity. The hospital team was ready at the entrance. They moved the old man inside like a machine, efficient, fast, no wasted steps. A doctor pulled Jinho aside within minutes, didn't sugarcoat it. His heart is under significant stress. The next hour is critical. Minutes matter here, Mr. Park. Minutes matter. The words just landed different after everything Jinho had just heard in that kitchen. His father had spent 15 years not thinking about what he'd done, and now he might not have 15 minutes to finish making it right. Jinho found Zarina in the corridor. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, not crying anymore, just thinking. He walked up beside her, didn't look at her directly. You don't have to stay. Long pause. She didn't answer right away, and honestly, he wouldn't have blamed her for walking out those doors and never looking back. But Zarina wasn't built like that. She exhaled slowly. I know. And she stayed. Something shifted in Jinho in that moment, quietly, permanently. He didn't have words for it yet, but it was there. They sat in that waiting room for 40 minutes, not talking much, just
existing in the wreckage of everything that had come out today. And then Jinho's phone buzzed. A message. No name, unknown number. 3 words. We saw everything. And just like that, Jinho understood. His father's sins weren't done collecting payment. Jinho stared at his phone. We saw everything. He looked up at Zarina. She read his face immediately, and something in her expression shifted, like a door she'd been holding shut for years just quietly opened. Sit down, she said softly. I'll tell you everything. She didn't rush it, didn't perform it, just told it, straight, like someone who'd carried a thing so long they'd made peace with the weight of it. Her father ran a logistics company, small, legitimate, East Africa to Southeast Asia routes. Good man, built it from nothing. Then, one day, federal agents showed up. Contraband in the shipments, documents forged, accounts flagged. He swore he didn't know. Nobody listened, because somebody had already made sure nobody would. He went to prison, Zarina said quietly. He died there, 3 years in. She paused. My mother tried to fight it. Lawyers, appeals, everything. Another pause, longer this time. She died fleeing trying to get my younger brother out of the country before they came for what was left of us. The waiting room felt very small suddenly. Jinho wasn't moving, wasn't blinking much either, honestly. Zarina changed her name after that, built a new identity, quietly, carefully, spent years tracking the money trail, and the trail led here, to Los Angeles, to this family, and to one other name. His name is Victor Seo, she said, former partner of Jinho's father, originally Chicago-based, now running operations out of Atlanta, the one who actually executed the plan, the one who used Jinho's father's funding and his father's silence as cover, and the one who just sent that text. Jinho stood up slowly, walked to the window, stood there with his back to her, and she let him have that moment because she understood what was happening inside him right now. He was doing the math, his schools, his cars, his opportunities, the foundation his whole identity was built on, all of it tracing back to a logistics company that got destroyed, a father framed, a mother lost on the run, a girl who had to become someone else just to survive, his life built on her loss. And then, for the first time in maybe his entire adult life, Jinho Park broke down. Not loudly, not dramatically, just shoulders dropping, head bowing, one hand pressed against the cold glass. A quiet collapse, the kind that's been coming for years. Zarina didn't look away, didn't comfort him either, just witnessed it, because sometimes that's what people need, someone to see them fall apart and not flinch. Here's what got me about Zarina, though. She didn't come for revenge. She came to stop it, stop the cycle, stop Victor, stop the next family from being erased. That's not anger. That's something much harder than anger. That's purpose. They sat back down eventually, both different people than they were an hour ago. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. And then, footsteps in the corridor. Slow ones. A doctor in scrubs appeared at the waiting room entrance, face unreadable, and the entire room held its breath. The doctor said he was stable. Barely stable, but alive. Jinho exhaled for what felt like the first time in 3 hours. Zarina closed her eyes, just for a second. They let Jinho see him briefly. The old man looked smaller in that hospital bed, thinner, all the authority drained out of him, leaving just a person, fragile, tired, guilty. He grabbed Jinho's hand, didn't say much, didn't need to. The grip said everything. Fix it. Jinho walked back out into that corridor and made a decision, a quiet one, the most dangerous kind. Now listen, when you've spent your whole life inside a network built on power and silence, you know exactly how to use it. Every contact, every favor owed, every person who picked up the phone because they had to. Jin-ho spent his entire career building that web. He'd just never turned it inward. Until now. Victor Sia was careful, always had been, never touched anything directly, never signed anything traceable, always 3 layers removed from the actual damage. Smart man. But smart men get comfortable, and comfortable men make mistakes. Jin-ho sent one message through a mutual connection, neutral, casual, suggested a meeting about legacy business. Victor responded within the hour. Of course he did, because to Victor, Jin-ho reaching out meant one thing. The son was ready to step into the empire. He had absolutely no idea.
They met at a warehouse in an industrial stretch outside downtown, the kind of place that doesn't show up on food delivery apps. Victor walked in confident, 2 guys flanking him, expensive watch, easy smile. "Jin-ho, you look like your father." "I know," Jin-ho said. And then he laid it all out. The recordings, financial documents Zarina had spent years quietly collecting, testimonies from people Victor thought had disappeared, a paper trail so clean it almost looked artistic. Victor's smile didn't fall immediately. It kind of melted, slowly. "You don't want to do this," he said quietly. "This destroys your family too." "I know," Jin-ho said again. Same tone, same face. "I'm counting on it." Law enforcement had been tipped anonymously 40 minutes before that meeting. They were already outside. Victor didn't even make it back to his car. And here's the part that stays with me. As they walked Victor out, he looked back at Jin-ho. Not angry, not threatening, just confused. Like he genuinely could not understand why someone would choose accountability over power. Like it didn't compute. And Jin-ho just watched him go. Over the next weeks, the empire came down, quietly, systematically. Accounts closed, partnerships severed, structures that took decades to build, dismantled from the inside. Jin-ho didn't save himself, he just chose to stop the bleeding. It cost him almost everything, and he did it anyway. But the story isn't over yet, because the final moment, the one that actually breaks you, hadn't happened yet. A week later, the old man was on his feet. Barely, but standing. He asked for Zarina to come to his room. No staff, no audience, just him and her and 15 years of damage sitting between them. He apologized, properly, fully, eyes open, nothing held back. Zarina listened to every word, and when he finished, she forgave him. Not for him, for herself, because she understood something most people never learn. Forgiveness isn't saying it was okay, it's refusing to let their sin become your prison. She left the mansion 3 days later, by choice, head up, same way she always walked. Jin-ho stood at the top of the steps and watched her go. Didn't try to stop her, didn't say much, just, "Thank you." She nodded once and kept walking. That same afternoon, Jin-ho went to the security room and turned off every camera in the mansion, every single one, then walked outside and stood in the sunlight. Just stood there, like someone who just put down something incredibly heavy and hadn't realized how long they'd been carrying it. Here's the lesson. Power without truth is just a beautiful lie, and some people spend their whole lives defending that lie, because the truth costs too much. Gino paid the price, and walked into the light anyway. If this story moved something in you, don't scroll past, because here's the truth. Stories like this only survive when people like you decide they matter. If you watched this far and felt nothing, okay, maybe this wasn't for you. But if something in this hit different, subscribe, share it, because somebody in your life needs to hear this today. And if you keep scrolling without doing anything, that's okay. But just know, Zarina forgave a man who destroyed her family.
The least we can do is click a button.